All right, y'all, we're going to hop right into it. Welcome to the I Found a Friend podcast, where we're your friend helping you navigate life's journey. It's your host, Eric Diggs.
Jordan Diggs.
John Diggs.
All right, John, what are we going to be talking about today?
All right, today we're going to be talking about strengthening relationships because, that's just a valuable skill in life to be able to improve on relationships. But more specifically, since Eric and Jordan and I will be moving into an apartment together, we're going to talk about strengthening sibling dynamics. Because a lot of people would say, like, oh, why are you moving in with your brothers? It makes sense, but for some people, that seems pretty ridiculous. So there are certain things that we've implemented or started doing to make sure that we have a good space between each other to where we respect each other's boundaries. So what are things that you say have helped us cultivate? Actually, let's backtrack.
Yeah.
How would you describe our dynamic before when we were younger versus now?
Yeah, I was going to say we need to start from the beginning with this one. But before I get into that, I just wanted to say, like, what you just said is interesting because, like, I was with a coworker earlier this week, and I was talking about moving out with you guys, and they were like, yeah, I cannot move in with my brother. He was saying that. I was like, why? And he was just like, we don't get along. So I think it's interesting that there's three of us moving in together. But, yeah, let's take them back to the beginning. How were we? I feel like when we were younger, we argued all of the time. Is that a fair assessment? Or
I wouldn't say all the time, but it's frequent.
we definitely didn't get along as much as we did now. And I feel like our personalities definitely have changed since we were younger. I mean, like, there's a lot of maturing to do as a kid, but like when you're a kid, you're more selfish. You get more agitated a lot.
Yeah, Jordan was that one sibling that whenever we got into a fight, he'd be the first person to be like, "I'm telling mom, like, bro, be for real. We can't even fight for real if you're not settling it yourself. Why are you running to mom and dad? What are we doing?"
It's funny. I feel like a reason why I always feel like Eric and John double team me. I feel like like when I was a kid, they got along better. So it was easier for them like to double team me. And yeah, I always feel like I was the odd one out. So if I needed backup, I'm just going like, I'm telling. That's what I used to say all the time. I'm telling.
Dang, I feel like it's a hit or miss. Like, I'm either getting backed up by John or Jordan and John are double teaming me. So, yeah, I can see how Jordan would always feel like the odd one out, though, because it was either one of those two things happening. It wasn't ever me or Jordan going against John until I guess we got older. But when we were younger, it was always like that. But it's always interesting, like, talking about this topic because my mom, she always throws comments every now and again saying, man, I can't wait to see what you guys are like when you guys live together. And so that's something that's got us even more intentional about, just wanting to even just be more intentional with strengthening the relationship between us as siblings. Like John and Jordan said, like, growing up, yeah, there was a lot of petty arguments, petty little fights. But I feel like that's just like with anybody that's growing up with their siblings just young.
Well, that's not necessarily true because I had a friend say like when they were younger they were closer, but now that they're older they don't get along with their siblings. And I feel like it's the opposite for us. Like when we were younger we weren't necessarily close. I wouldn't even have considered y'all my friends. I'm like, yeah, they're my brothers. Now I can genuinely say that you guys are my friends, and I feel like we're closer and we just have those conversations that I really appreciate. But I feel like a huge reason why, it was easy for us to argue when we were younger. I'm just like taking us back to our childhood was because we had to share a lot of things. Like our first phone. We had to share our first phone.
Yeah, that's a setup for an argument right there.
Yeah, like you already had 10 minutes on the phone. It's my turn to use the phone. Yeah. And then what else would like be things that we would, I guess, bicker about when we were younger?
I mean, sharing rooms early on, so you just all up in each other's space.
Or someone's on the video game and someone else wants to play or watch TV. Like, you want to watch this channel, but I want to watch this channel. Eric wants to watch football, but I don't want to watch football.
Yeah, there's a lot of stupid arguments. I remember one time Jordan took the back of my head while we're folding our clothes and just threw that mug in the ground, bro. I thought I chipped a tooth. I like started bawling, crying, bro. I thought it was over with.
Yeah, and I said I tripped, but
Yeah, he didn't trip. He gripped it. You know what I'm saying? Like, y'all seen Across the Spider-Verse where Miguel picked up, you know what I'm saying, Miles, and just, you know what I'm saying? He did that to the back of my head, bro. Just threw it in the ground.
that's crazy. But I don't know. It's those memories like that. But my mom always says, like, we didn't argue, like, as much as we think. I think when you're younger, you feel like it's elevated. But I guess I know we matured, but what started to change as we got older?
I think everybody just started growing into their own individuality, growing into their selves as people, understanding what we want as individuals. So like you said, a lot of stuff was shared, but I know I went to college in New York. Jordan went to college in Ohio. John was the only one that stayed in Nashville. So you grow on your own as a person, and you get to really understand, like, what do you want to pursue in life, and you start seeing the real world just a little bit and kind of how that works. And then now that we're all back together, it's like, okay, we've been off on our own. We know what we want. And honestly, our goals align, so why not do it together? Because by ourselves, we see, like, it's not just as easy just starting from scratch and taking yourself to the top by yourself. You need a team with yourself, and who better to be than your own brothers?
Yeah. I would say like now we kind of truly see each other and truly understand who each other are. And that just like makes our dynamic so much better because like, you know, like we know what each other kind of wants and we know our personalities and we know when someone else is mad and they need time for themselves. And I still feel like we're learning in this area, but like we now recognize, okay, if John's not feeling it, if Eric's not feeling it, just kind of give them space and, in a few minutes or, a few hours, like they'll be back to themselves, but like not trying to press each other and like be all up on each other. And I feel like when you're living in a shared space, it seems like, oh, you're all up on each other. But I mean, like we all live, in the same vicinity now, but we realize like our rooms are our own personal space and like we respect that, like we're not just barging to each other's room anytime we want to, and when we do need somebody, like we knock on the door, like we're, respectful about that.
Yeah, I think that interacting with other people is probably like the biggest thing for me. Just being outside of high school and like being able to develop and mature while I was in college, seeing how I interact with other people, seeing what ways I could navigate and communicate to make sure I'm avoiding tense situations was transferred over back into my siblings. Like Jordan said, it's respecting at the end of the day. So many people don't really respect their siblings. Like knocking on the door, I did that on FaceTime while trying to get something from Jordan. And they're like, oh, you knock on your sibling's door? And I was like, yeah, like I don't want him barging in my room, vice versa. Like if he do, like, you know what I'm saying? If he needs something from me, he's gonna knock on my door. It's something simple like that. Or like if Jordan is mad, then we'll talk about it. See, the thing is, I'm like the glue between Eric and Jordan. Not to say Eric and Jordan aren't close, but like I have a different relationship with them than they do with each other. So like Eric and I, we played football together. We did a lot of sports together. So we spent a lot of time together. So that's how we grew close. And then Eric went off to college, and then I spent more time with Jordan. So that's kind of where that got developed. But at the end of the day, it's like I didn't really see them and respect them as their own people because like they're your siblings. You're like, I'll live with them. It's whatever. But when I started being like, okay, I don't want them doing this to me. So let me, you know what I'm saying, treat them as a human and do the same thing. It helped so much. It helped a ton.
And I say it can be harder when like your family, because you live with these people, like them for who they truly are. We were out to eat at a restaurant today, and we were just joking about Eric. We're like, yeah, at first he seems all like mature, but once you get to know him, he can be a little, agitator, a little instigator. But we were saying that because like we kind of see like all aspects of Eric, So like when you really know somebody, that like really puts it to the test because I feel like your emotions are hidden almost, like because it's easier just to go off on them because you know them, you're comfortable with them. They make you mad, you can just go off. And I feel like that's something like if I'm evaluating myself right now, that's something that I have to work on. I don't really just go off all the time, but like I know myself and I can get really agitated quickly. And I know my brothers have experienced that a lot, like me just getting agitated and not really wanting to talk to them or just like, what do you want, So
I think an easy thing to do is just be dismissive because they are family. Be like, oh, they'll get over it. Like one thing that I had to start telling myself is like, just because it's not a big deal to me doesn't mean I should not give them the respect that they want or deserve. So like me and Eric, once again, we play football together in the locker room, using the bathroom. Like, you know what I'm saying? There are no stall doors or whatever. So like that was like no big deal to me. So when Jordan was gone in college, I would go to the bathroom and I would be able to leave the door open because I'm upstairs alone by myself. But when Jordan got back, he would be so irritated. I'm like, bro, it's not a big deal. The bathroom is in a different part of the house. It's whatever. And then like, I was like, you know what? I talked to him about it. I was like, I don't understand. And he was like, it's just gross. I don't like that. Please shut the door. And it takes 2 seconds to shut the door. But sometimes we just be so prideful, caught up in our own little world that we're like, it's whatever. They'll be all right. And I was like, you know what? Even though it inconveniences me seemingly, or it's not something that I necessarily want to do to protect the peace, because that's really what I care about now. I don't like arguing. I don't like going back and forth with people. Protecting my peace, way better than going back and forth over a stupid argument. I was like, I'll start shutting the door. So me shutting the door led to less arguments just because I was willing to sit down, and even if I didn't agree or see eye to eye, put that perspective to the side and see it from his perspective.
Another thing is also like when you're going through arguments or you're in confrontational situations or disagreements, not taking things personally. We're able to analyze the situation for what it is, but not personally attacking the other person. So yeah, if I'm doing something wrong, yeah, you can confront the action, but it's not an attack on that person's character. And that's something that we've been intentional about doing. And that's how you protect your relationships and grow your relationship stronger, because once you start attacking someone's character, that's when you get to personal, and that's when you really cause rifts. And so that's something we've been very careful about. And if we've ever done that, I know like we had a big disagreement a couple months ago. And we all just came back after some time and just apologized to each other. And then we kept it moving after that. It's so easy to get caught up on just any negative moment, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not that big of a deal. And we understand that together we're so much stronger than we are apart. And why would you let something little tear that up? And so many groups do that. Over something little, they fall apart. And so we've just been intentional just about not taking things personally, respecting each other's boundaries, and growing together.
That's one thing that I really appreciate about my brothers. Is like we all will come back and say that we're sorry if we realize that we were wrong in a situation. Because like whenever we do like get into an argument, because like with any relationship, there's going to be a disagreement somewhere down the line. And it's not about having disagreements. It's about how do you handle it. We always assess the situation. And if we realize like the other person's point of view and that we're wrong, we will come back and say we're sorry. And then we don't hold grudges. Like if I'm upset for, this day, the next day I'm not going to be holding the grudge. Like, oh, I'm mad at you, I'm not going to talk to you. No, like we just let it go. It's not that big of a deal at the end of the day. And if we hold each other accountable. So if we do see someone is like upset or agitated for multiple days in a row, we check in. We're like, all right, we need to sit down and talk about this. Like we literally like, all right, let's talk about this. Like what's going on? Why are you mad? Why are you upset? And I feel like that's huge because like in any relationship, any friendship, any relationship, you need to know how to communicate. And that's huge. And communicating is not only kind of knowing how to express yourself and knowing how to express how you're feeling, it's also kind of listening to the other person and understanding how they're feeling.
Another big thing that I've started learning and realizing just from other relationships that I've had with people is understanding how during tense moments they respond and they hear. It's like somebody can hear what you're saying, but they only care about how you made them feel. And it's like you could say everything that you needed to say, but if you said it in an aggressive tone, they'll start tone policing. Me, I hate being tone policed. Like if you gonna hear what I have to say. And then like somebody's yelling at me, I'm gonna listen to what you have to say, because like guys, it's typical for guys to be used to that, being yelled at by coaches. Like you're listening to what they have to say. Yes, they're yelling at you. You don't take it personal because it's like, okay, they still said, hey, I went to the wrong gap. If I'm playing football, I was supposed to go to the B gap and I went to the A gap and I got smacked, lost the ball. They're yelling at you. They're upset. You made a mistake. You move on. You keep it going. Some people aren't used to that. So you being in an aggressive, hostile tone, they're going to take it personal and be like, okay, yeah, I heard you, but you made me feel like I was less than. You made me feel like I'm not a human. Other people, they're able to take that brute, straightforward approach and not take it personal. So just understanding how people are, can receive communication is really big, because if somebody's focused on the way you made them feel versus what you actually said, or they're focused on what you actually said versus how you made them feel, then it's going to be a miscommunication if you're not trying to best cooperate with how they receive communication.
That's so huge. And I know John checks me. If I ever start raising my voice, he'll be like, bro, why are you raising your voice for? And I hate it. I'm like, dang, I am raising my voice. I need to calm down and take a breath. But I appreciate that he does that, because it just like helps me analyze myself and like how I am in the situation. And similarly along the lines of not only like your tone and how they like you make them feel, but it's also like their interpretation of what you said. Because you could have said something and meant something completely different, but the way they interpreted it makes them think you meant this. So like that's what communication is about. Like you really like sitting down with that person and trying to understand them rather than being defensive and argumentative. And I feel like that's what like we've gotten, and like we're even like still like learning and leaning into, is just like trying to understand where we're coming from as brothers.
I think another big thing that helps, especially with us strengthening our sibling relationship, is just supporting each other, celebrating each other's accomplishments, and not being jealous of each other. We also recognize each other's strengths and we start playing towards those things. So if John's good at graphic design, Jordan's good at social media, I'm good at finances. It's okay. We're going to put stuff in your area for you to take care of that thing. You know, John take care of graphic design stuff. You create visuals. You create art. Jordan, you take care of social media stuff. I'll take care of planning and things like that, creating budgets or boundaries like that. And just encouraging each other and cultivating those gifts. It's so easy to get jealous of somebody else having success, but at the end of the day, when one person succeeds, the whole team succeeds. And that's the mentality that all three of us have, is that when one of us make it, we all make it. And if one person is up more than another person, then we helping out. Like, well, I got it. Like, I'm giving out and making sure everybody else is coming up with me. It's nobody just taking off and then saying, oh, I'm good. Like, y'all got to make it on your own because I made it on my own. It's like, yeah, I'm up and I'm going to pull y'all up with me. And then we're going to pull each other up together.
I just want to testify to this because sometimes you can say stuff and it can sound good, but like, no, Eric really like lives this out. I was in college, and one day I looked down at my phone and it was like, you got $100 from Eric. I'm like, what? Like $100? Like, that's crazy. So I was like, Eric, thank you for cash apping me $100. You did not have to do that at all. And like, I used it, to like buy some more snacks and stuff that I needed for my dorm, and I needed that money. So I was like,
snacks. My fault, bro.
Now, that college broke ain't no joke. I know that college broke.
I thought you was gonna say something like groceries or something, bro. Said you got snacks.
The snacks were the groceries, okay?
All right, for sure. Anyways, keep talking.
But I was just like very appreciative, and like that didn't just happen once. That happened multiple times. And Eric, like, he started a new job, and like he's been making more and more money. So he just wanted to give back to us, and like I'm very appreciative of that. And then like along those lines, like, we're each other's biggest cheerleaders. Like, I like whenever anyone asks about any of us, we like to, like hype each other up, hype our brothers up. Like whenever people ask me about my brothers, I'm like, yeah, Eric, he's super wise, super smart. He's into finance and he does X, Y, and Z. John, like, he's a graphic designer. He's super creative, and I call him the cool twin. Like whenever I talk about him, sometimes I go live on TikTok. They're like, what are your brothers like? And I always call John the cool twin. I'm like, he's so swaggy. He has the best style. He's just so cool. He paints shoes. He does this and that and that and that. And like, I love that because Eric was saying, like, we don't tear each other down. We build each other up. And that's huge.
Like, literally somebody was making fun of me today because I can't dance, like, for real. And I know that. And I was like, look, I'm not the dancer of the family. John and Jordan, they can dance. And I gladly celebrate that. And I gladly acknowledge my weaknesses. And that's no personal offense taken off of that. But also, it's just like, whenever we get the opportunity, like Jordan said, like, I'm also promoting my brothers, and they do the same thing. Like, we was literally on a call last week with a company, and like at the end of the call, we're like, hey, what else do y'all need? Like, my brother over here is good with social media. I'm good with cultivating relationships with people, starting conversations. Like, we can help in these areas as well, not just here. So we're always looking for opportunities to put each other up and look out for each other. And that's something special. You don't get that a lot. Like, a lot of people, it's easy to get jealous of people's success and not celebrate each other. It's easy to, only be there and wait for somebody's downfall. But I'm glad that they don't take it personally, because I know growing up I got a lot more attention just because sports took up so much time and I was really good at sports. But, they didn't get jealous. They just celebrate me. And even to this day, like, we celebrate each other. So that's really special to have.
I will say it's like so cool coming into things as a team, because like this company we're meeting with, like, we're like the package deal, like the Diggs boys, all three of us. And just like listening to ourselves as a team collectively, it's just so cool. I'm like, wow, these are my brothers. Like, they're like on the phone, like giving their elevator pitch about themselves. I'm like, wow, like, these are my brothers. That's like so awesome. And like together, like, we're unstoppable. So
I think a big part of us being able to be in this position too is just like a lot of the reconciliation that as a family we've gone through. We just had a lot of tough conversations within the past like 2 months or so. But I think as brothers, once we got like back from college and everything like that, there were just a lot more conversations that were had. Things that hurt us in the past that we never really vocalized. I know especially with Jordan, like, he has a tendency to bottle things up. And so like it'll come out later. And I never understood that until later. And so there'd be things where he talked about like, oh, like, for example, he started TikTok off and he didn't really want people to know that he was doing this thing. And I was telling people and I didn't realize that upset him. And then we talked about it and I didn't realize like, oh, he wanted to keep that on the low. Like, one thing I can say about my brothers is we're humble. If you ask us about it, we're going to tell you, but you won't know what we're doing unless you know kind of situation.
You ask.
Yeah,
like,
unless you
really
ask.
dig.
So Jordan, he was just trying to be humble, and he had different reasons for why he didn't want me talking about it. But I was just like, bro, why are you not, you know what I'm saying? Why are you not happy? Why are you not proud? Why are you not flexing this? Like, this is a big deal. And he's like, I don't want to talk about it. So there's just different things that you have to talk about with your family, with your siblings, with your, friends that, might have hurt you from the past. Because once again, that one sermon that Pastor Dave talked about where it's like you let 1,000 situations go by, or you let one situation go by where it's like, oh, it wasn't that big of a deal, but it did kind of upset me. That's nothing. But if you let 1,000 of those go by, then you randomly snap out of nowhere. People are like, where did all this come from? It's like a bunch of those situations that weren't that big of a deal to mention now became a big deal much later. So if there's a lot of resentment that you have to have that conversation with somebody that's willing to listen, that's willing to be respectful, that's willing to hear you out without being dismissive, So I think that's what helped us a lot.
One thing that I think that's pretty mature of all of us is this understanding that we all came from the same hurt, same background, same past. So a lot of people respond to things differently, and we understand that about each other. That at the end of the day, the root is the same. The response is going to be different. But if we could come back like we have been recently, and let's dig up the root, it strengthens the relationship as a whole, because it's like, all right, we understand that we're not each other's enemies. At the end of the day, like, we are each other's biggest supporters. We're part of the same family. And we just want to move on and not only do life together, but heal together, inspire the world together. Like, we have a vision that's bigger than ourselves, and we understand that it starts internally first.
There's a couple like instances recently where I realized like, wow, we've definitely gotten closer. And one of them was I was just like asking my brothers, I was like, who are your closest friends? And like for us, it's like always like we have like a lot of friends, very sociable people, very conversationalists, but we don't have like a lot of close friends. And we were just like being honest about that. We're like, if we're being honest, like the closest people we are to now are each other. And then I was like, wow, like I appreciate you guys that I have you guys, and that like we're moving out together, we're doing life together. Like I'm so happy that I don't have to do this alone. Like it's like a relief. And then Eric even asked us a question the other day. He was like, if my girlfriend and I get married, would you still live with us? I was like, would you want us to live with you married? He was like, yeah, I wouldn't mind, honestly. And like, I was like, wow, like for him to say that, that's huge.
That is major. I think one last thing to talk about too, in terms of like how we were able to patch up our relationship, is the ability to say sorry. I know I used to struggle with that for such a long time. Eric, you know what I'm saying?
He's learning.
He's working on it. Jordan, he's pretty solid. But like being able to say I'm sorry, even if you don't feel like you're wrong, or you know what I'm saying, like putting your pride to the side. And then another big thing that I love to say is like two things can be true at once. I can be right about a situation and also hurt your feelings. Or like, you know what I'm saying? Like my perspective can be right. Your perspective can also be right. They say there's two sides to every story, and then there's the truth. So it's like being able to say you're sorry, put your pride to the side, but also acknowledge that there's multiple things that could be right about a situation. And so like not seeing everything from your one perspective. And then that'll help with those conversations as well. That's how we're able to say like, oh, I'm willing to move in with him, because it's like somebody's like, oh, John, you did that. I'm like, first reaction is to be all defensive, and then be like, okay, did I do that? I probably did. Let me apologize. Let me get right. So
yeah, I feel like an example of this. I'm sorry, no, you go ahead. I feel like an example of this was like even this podcast, like getting this, like all three of us on board was like it was like a struggle, honestly, because I had been away at college, and Eric and John started the podcast while I was away at college. So like in my head, I was like, okay, this is gonna be something between them two, And like I'll come on as like a guest co-host, every now and then. But that wasn't their intention at all. They're like, no, we want all three of us to be on the podcast. And like now I understand that. But when I first moved back home from college, I did not understand that. I was like, I got other things going on, like da 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 da. So like there was just like one day when I was super tired, and I was like, I'm not gonna do the podcast today. They're like, what do you mean you're not gonna do the podcast today? Like, you're a co-host. Like, you need to be on here. I'm like, but I'm not a full-time co-host. So like we were going back and forth. And just like the way we resolved that, like that really made me realize how much we've grown. So do you guys kind of want to talk about?
Yeah, I think what's huge there is not letting one moment and one conflict ruin something long term. Okay, that's in the moment. Like, we're frustrated right now. I can't figure it out right now. But are we going to ruin this whole relationship we have in terms of having this built together, that we know that this can take off in the future, a year or 2 years from now. And this is also like bonding time as well, doing this together, right? And so a lot of times people ruin relationships over one moment, over one disagreement, over a heated moment. It was heated, but it's just one moment. And you forget all of the good things, and logic and reasoning goes out of your brain. And now, before you know it, you don't talk to that person like ever again. And so we didn't do that. We didn't let one moment ruin this. We also understand that, you know, you can win an argument but lose the relationship, and then what did you really win at the end of the day? So we value the relationship more than being right in the argument, and that takes a lot of humility, because like John said, you could be right but you could still hurt somebody's feelings, or you could be right and that person still won't want to listen to you just because of, you know, the filter, the wall they have up. So being able to analyze that situation and understand that and say, you know what, I value this relationship more than me being right. This relationship is going to be more beneficial in the future than me saying, yeah, I won this argument. That's huge.
Yeah. So the way that this got resolved was we had like this argument, and then we just took a day. You know, we like we let each other just kind of have some space to process everything that's going on. And after we had like time to process, Eric sent me a text message, and he was like, Jordan, like, I know you thought this, but like my intention was that we will all do this together. We will build together. He's like, I'm not putting any pressure on you, but like this is our heart, as you know, me and John's heart. And he was like, if you want to do it, we still want you to, you know, be a full-time co-host. Let me know what you think. And because like I saw his heart, and then I had to like reflect on myself, and I was like, okay, why wouldn't I want to be a full-time co-host? And I was just thinking, oh, it's just because I'm being lazy, because I don't feel like it one day. And I was like, you know what? This is bigger than how I'm feeling. So like I had to humble myself and be like, okay, I hear them. And Eric had, you know, came and just like communicated with me. And like I appreciate that. And then from there, like we've been chilling, you know, so.
You skipped a few steps.
Okay, then tell the steps I skipped, John.
Yeah. A lot happened that day. It's very rare that all three of us are arguing from multiple perspectives. So it's interesting because like I did something that they were tweaking about, and then Eric and Jordan were tweaking. So like it was like all three of us were just kind of like going back and forth over certain things, and Jordan felt like we were ganging up on him, and then Eric, he'd be like, oh, you gang. It was whatever. But I was able to play mediator for a little bit once I got the issue that I was, you know what I'm saying, in the doghouse for resolved. I was able to talk to both of them because, you know, like in an argument, once I can get real tense without even understanding what's going on. So I was like, hey, why are we yelling? Like, let's calm down. Let's vocalize. Like, yes, you're right here, Jordan, but you're wrong here. Eric, yes, you're right here, but you're wrong here. And so like being able to play mediator allowed everybody to calm down. And then we took our distance. Like I was talking to somebody, and he gave me like such interesting wisdom. So he said his wife unloaded like some information on him that she was like trying to low-key press on him about, and he took a day to respond. Like she texted it to him, and he took a whole day, and she was like, did you see my text? And he was like, yeah, I'm just taking time to think about it. And the society that we live in, we feel like we have to rush and reply to people and text people back, but if we don't take time to think about the things that we say, then we can rush into saying something that we don't necessarily mean. And so he said he was able to think about it, he prayed about it, and then he was able to respond to his wife after he took time and distance, and he was able to resolve a situation much better than he ever anticipated because he took time. And so sometimes it just takes time. You don't have to squash an argument right there. You can come back and revisit the topic later when you're in a much calmer state and you have the words figured out that you want to say. So don't be afraid to take your time and your distance from people and then come back.
You know, something that somebody recently told me too is like, next time before you say something that you know is going to be, you know, very confrontational or coming out of a state of emotions, take a day. And if you still feel that way, then yeah, go ahead. But the majority of the time, even after a couple hours, you're like, dang, I'm really not even feeling that. I don't even know why I just said that or why did I react like that. And so, yeah, that's huge. Taking time and taking patience. Because even going back to like the whole day that we was arguing about getting everybody on the podcast, I know like for me personally, there were some other things going on outside of that situation alone that was on my mind as well. And so that got put into that whole situation as well. And so a lot of times you got to give each other grace because a lot of times like what's directed at you isn't for you, it isn't coming from you, it's something else. And so understanding about being able to get to the root of that, but then also me as a person understanding how to better analyze my emotions and process them and then communicate that and be aware of that is also on me as well. So that's something I've been growing in and being intentional about too.
Yeah, but along those lines, like we kind of knew about the situation you were dealing with too, so that allowed us to give you more grace too. Even when I don't know, I was feel like super heated. I was like, okay, but I know Eric's dealing with this, so we just need to take time, and also taking time can help you be a better communicator. Because I feel like sometimes in the moment, like I don't know the right words to say in terms of even like defending my side of the argument. So taking time can also like give yourself the right way to communicate with people, like you can process exactly how you're feeling. So yeah, I'm appreciative of like how we communicate and like our new communication style. So with that said, how do you think it's gonna be when we move out?
I'm excited,
Yeah.
to say the least. There's a lot that we have to figure out, but in terms of like what we're buying and furnishing the apartment, but in terms of us actually living together, I'm very excited for what the apartment has us doing and just being able to grow and develop as men on our own.
Yeah, I'll say the biggest thing is just continuing the communication. As long as we stay in healthy communication and be intentional about that, we'll be okay. Yes, disagreements will come about. Yes, there may be arguments, but as long as you communicate and do it in a healthy way, we'll be fine. And so, like John said, it's going to be exciting, like getting out and get into the world and starting to grow as men on our own and learn.
Yeah, I'm also excited that we have a plan. Like we're not just moving out, but we have like things that we want to do together, and it's like awesome because like it feels like it's intentional, it's purposeful. We're not just like moving out. We're trying to build together. So it's just like really exciting that I have my brothers, best friends, my best friends to live in life with.
With that note, I like to say, like, if you guys are listening to the end, y'all are real ones. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us be vulnerable. And we want you to know that if you were looking for a friend, you found one.